Ma'am, you may proceed.
Yes. Good evening, Professor Edwards, and a happy Friday good morning to all my colleagues. Emphasizing the role of continuing higher education as a significant catalyst for the holistic development of students, the third edition of Faculty Development Program is organized with the apt theme, Curriculum and Outcomes Assessment for Hospitality Education. We are privileged to have an eminent hospitality educator, Professor David A. Edwards from Johnson & Wales University, North Miami campus, USA. He is presently Associate Professor and the Chair of the College of Hospitality Management. We wholeheartedly welcome you, sir, for the FDP program. Once again, Professor Edwards, wish you a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving. I take this opportunity to welcome our Principal Chef Thiru, Vice Principal Mr. Rashekar, and all my colleagues to this program. We shall begin the program by seeking blessings from the Almighty. Professor Edwards, as you are new to our traditional environment, allow me to brief the significance of seeking blessings from Lord Ganesha. Lord Ganesha is one of the widely revered Hindu god who is considered as the remover of obstacles, the patron of arts and sciences, and the god of beginnings, who is honored at the start of rites and ceremonies. So we shall begin the program by seeking his blessing, sir. Raghavendra, may I request you to play the song?
गणनायकाय गणदैवताय गणाध्यक्षाय धीमहि गुणशरीराय गुणमण्डिताय गुणेशानाय धीमहि गुणातीताय गुणाधीशाय गुणप्रविष्टाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि.
Thank you, Raghavendra. So that was Lord Ganesha, our favorite god, sir. Professor Edwards.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting.
I now request all faculty members to turn on the video for a minute for the group photograph. Are we done, Raghavendra?
Yes, madam.
Thank you. I now request Chef Thiru to deliver his opening remarks and introduce Dr. Edwards to all of us.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Vedya. The hospitality and culinary education is an open and flexible education system that offers a broad range of study provisions and opportunities of numerous learning pathways for students and faculty members. To balance outputs of this in terms of graduates and market needs, the education providers have upgraded their knowledge and skills continuously. As we know, a paradigm shift is happening in the higher education landscape, where education moves towards less content and more towards learning about how to think critically and solve problems. Pedagogy is evolving to make education more experiential, integrated, learner-centered, discussion-based, and flexible, highlighting the importance and magnitude of this transformation. We have decided to discuss the critical aspects of curriculum and learning outcomes, focusing on hospitality education. We are continually making attempts to benchmark our curriculum to make it contemporary, have a global presence, and transform in tune with the strategic vision of Manipal Academy of Higher Education. The FDP was launched in June 2020 to provide a communication platform for educators and chosen industry experts to share experience in responding to the new challenges and opportunities. We are happy to announce that the program will be continuing with the new title, Lessons in Excellence, where we have decided to arrange one session every month with support of eminent international academicians and industry experts. The first edition of Lessons in Excellence was organized last month on the theme Effective Strategies for Virtual Teaching and Learning, which was very useful and appreciated by all concerned. Today, we are proud to have Professor David A. Edwards discuss the topic Curriculum and Outcomes Assessment for Hospitality Education. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Professor David A. Edwards, and I'm honored and privileged to introduce to all of you. David A. Edwards is an associate professor and the chair of the College of Hospitality Management at Johnson and Wales Universities of North Miami campus. Founded in 1914, Johnson and Wales University, across its 4 campuses, system as one of the largest hospitality schools in North America. Professor Edwards sits on the university's Curriculum Approval Committee and the University Committee on Academic Rank, as well as the College of Hospitality Management's Curriculum and Outcomes Assessment Committees. Professor Edwards has a diverse professional background spanning the sports media, the hotel industry, and academia. His media career included work in both newspaper and radio, while his hotel experience saw him holding positions in property operations, public relations, and rooms operation, working with internationally renowned resort companies, along with a stint in the limited service segment. Edwards holds undergraduate and graduate degree in hospitality management from Florida International University. Additionally, he has earned and maintained the Certified Hospitality Educator designation since 2012, and also certified in Hotel Industry Analytics. He is an active member of the International Council on Hotel, Restaurant, and Institutional Education, the National Society of Minorities in Hospitality, and International Association of Venue Managers. He also currently serves on the board of directors of Greater Miami and the Beaches Hotel Association and the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association Miami chapter, as well as advisory boards of the American Hotel and Lodging Association Educational Institute and Sandals Corporate University. Among his area of specialization are resort operations, media relations, facilities operations, and strategic and performance management. Professor Edwards has also presented papers on a range of topics at several national and international conferences, including AHELI's Global Summit on Hospitality Education and Development in China, Professor Edwards has also spearheaded the development of new academic program at Johnson Wales universities, the BS in Golf Management and BS in Cruise Management and MS Sports Leadership, as well as rewrite of BS Hospitality Management, recognized by South Florida's Legacy magazine as a top Black educator. He believes in a global multicultural approach to education and has led international hospitality educational experience to Australia, Ireland, Portugal, and South Africa. With this, I take this opportunity to welcome Professor David A. Edwards. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Shep, and it is an absolute honor to be sharing with you, with colleagues halfway around the world in such a distinct time difference and so on. But regardless of that, it does not mitigate against the urgency of sharing, and it's heartening actually to see colleagues across the globe really taking this approach. To share with you that we do have a similar series for us within Johnson Wales University. We actually have a faculty center of excellence, which each semester, which is faculty driven, supported by the administration of the university, but we do very similar things to what you're doing now to ensure that as practitioners, because Johnson Wales is very focused on experiential education. And when you're in the academy, sometimes you're removed from industry. So in order to maintain this connection with industry, we do have these series as a global faculty, but as more specifically within the College of Hospitality Management, we do take this charge very seriously in terms of staying connected with our industry to keep abreast with what's going on so that we can adequately respond to the needs of industry, because ultimately, in terms of preparing our students for the future, we have to be aware and abreast with industry's needs and the challenges that they face so that we can make adequate preparations within the classroom. So it is indeed an honor to share in this forum, and I hope that I've deliberately asked that this be a dialogue, a conversation where we put ideas. I'll share with you some of our best practices. So I hope to learn a lot from you guys as well in terms of what you're doing, share with you some of what we're doing, and that's how we make our industry stronger. As you know, hospitality as an academic discipline is still relatively young in terms of other academic disciplines, but we've come a far way. And as an industry, as I open up, I think it's important to kind of start with somewhat of a state of the industry and where we are as an industry. Over time, sometimes we've been hesitant as an industry towards change. We've not always, like for example, the tech industry, that's very quick and fast in accepting and initiating change and being innovative and so on. But the truth is that there have been several junctures over time where different circumstances, unfortunately, has forced our hands as an industry to make these changes. And I think we're at one of those pivotal moments. And I think just as this global pandemic that we face is a once in a century event, I think this really will be a watershed seismic moment in terms of higher education and what we do. And there is a thinking, and the landscape had been changing prior to COVID. So let me be clear on that the higher education landscape and our charge and our push and our need for change had been evident pre-COVID. I think what COVID has done is to accelerate the need for this change. So what's the state of the industry? Obviously, the hospitality industry, hospitality tourism, across all facets of the industry has been tremendously hit by COVID-19. We've had regionally and in different geographic regions, catastrophic happenings previously. The only difference with this event is it's global, it's happening all at once across all geographic regions, and not too many countries have been spared this. So across all segments, lodging, food service, transportation, you name it, have been hard hit. I think that you're starting, at least from our perspective here in the North American market, over the last 3 to 4 months, we've been starting to see very slow uptick. As was mentioned at the beginning, it's Thanksgiving holidays here in the United States this weekend. And in spite of the Center for Disease Control's warning to people to stay home, apparently there has been the reports, at least from the news media, has been that there's been an uptick. Well, as I mentioned earlier in a conversation before we got started, that whereas this is not great from the health practitioner's perspective and in terms of management of a global pandemic, but from an industry perspective, I think that brings us some good news, or a lot of good news. But where were we pre-COVID? And I like to, in different forums that I've done since the onset of COVID, I like to bring us back to, because a lot of times now what we have seen is so many people are just seeing where the industry is at in the middle of the pandemic. But where were we prior to the onset of the pandemic? I think prior to the onset of the pandemic, hospitality was in the midst of historic growth, basically across all regions of the world. So we're seeing tremendous global growth across the world in hospitality and tourism industry. Here in the US, we were facing a chronic labor shortage. I'll share as an example that in the months prior to COVID, that Marriott, which is one of the world's largest lodging companies, in the Florida region, I had every single HR manager from the Southeast Florida on my campus seeking to recruit our students. That had never happened in my 13 years at Johnson & Wales. Never saw that happen. So that's where we were pre-COVID, is this historic growth in the hospitality industry. So, as we go along, we'll talk a little bit about where the industry is going. Obviously, there's a need for change, and it ties right into our theme today of curriculum and outcomes-based assessment. So let's talk a little bit about the Johnson & Wales experience at the onset of COVID. That, like most universities, we were not as prepared. However, fortunately, back in the 2019-2020 academic year, it was our last year on the trimester system. We just converted to semesters in our undergraduate program, or across our undergraduate school in September this year. So thankfully for us, when COVID hit, we were just commencing the start of our spring trimester. So the provost had given directions to say, hey, let's be proactive, let's prepare for what might come in the spring. So the pivot was in terms of faculty preparedness. As faculty, we were right at that break. So we had a chance to pivot rather seamlessly from the faculty and the perspective. The biggest challenge came from the student and the disruption that caused, where for us, we're a residential campus as well. and students had to return home. Some students were left on campus because international borders had closed and so on and so forth. And so the biggest challenges we faced really were on in terms of academics, was on the student side. Unfortunately, in the spring semester, all our culinary labs had to be suspended, and we ended up completing those over the summer months. Thankfully, we were able to do that, having now pivoted and worked with the CDC guidelines and the state and local guidelines there. So it was a hard pivot to basically online learning. However, what we did is we took the time, and instead of embarking as we normally would have on our summer break, we paused and said, let's get some skills in, let's get some expertise in, and we underwent across the university a lot of training for faculty to get them up to speed in terms of the preparation and development for virtual delivery. So where we are now in the fall is that all our academic classes are being delivered virtually, and then most labs are being delivered face-to-face with some modifications. So that's the Johnson & Wales experience. And I want to talk a little bit, because we have, as a university, been at the forefront of outcomes education. It's the center of everything that we do is outcomes education, in outcomes assessment. So as mentioned in the introduction, that I've worked a lot the last 2 to 3 years on program development, and that's exactly where we start, is what's the outcome in terms of programmatics. When a student graduates from this program with this being conferred with this degree, what is it that they're expected to know? How do we know that they know or have attained this knowledge or skills or whatever it is that they say? And that guides everything. Then we have to do the curriculum mapping to make sure that every course that's in the curriculum that we're offering has some relevance to the programmatic outcomes. So we do a tracking and a mapping of where it's introduced, where it's reinforced, and where it's assessed. Now, fortunately for us, this has put us in good stead. We actually just went through last academic year or 10-year reaccreditation with our accrediting body. And that was one of the things that we got really highlighted for and commended for, is the work that we've done on outcomes assessment. Because as we go along, we'll talk a little bit about it, it's really the core of what we say we are in terms of the product that we offer. What is it that our students are getting? What are they expected to graduate with? And then if you blend that in with industry, what is the industry expectation? And then you use that as the platform in which to develop our programs, develop our products. And then, you know, it's a lot of heavy lift on the forefront, but once we've done that heavy lifting, then it becomes, when you do the assessments and you do the analysis of the data and so on, I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along, about how the process actually works for us. Then you really see it makes sense, because importantly, it engages, at least in our experience, it engages all our faculty members. So this is not just the faculty that's teaching a course in which outcomes are measured. It's not just their responsibility, because if you look at the data, and they're probably, for example, let me pull one from a typical hospitality, maybe from food service, is maybe communication skills are not as strong. Then you've got to go back, not to the course where it was assessed, but to the foundation courses where it was these skills were introduced and reinforced, and you've had meaningful. In my experience as chair of our campus college, what I've found is the things, and I go back to my days when I taught a lot more than I do now, is especially when teaching courses like strategic management, and I talk about, you know, the lack of, or the under preparation for financials and so on. then outcomes assessment really brings this to the fore, where you can address this and you can say, hey, you know what, this is not just an anecdote that I'm talking that students don't understand ratios, and I have to reteach ratios in a strategic management course instead of really focusing on strategy. But you can now go back and create a plan to try to remedy this. And so the data collection is very important for this analysis, and it allows for the participation of all the faculty across the board to be part of the process. So I'm really happy that you guys are honing in on outcomes assessment and the importance that it is, because I think it helps us in terms of accountability to make sure that what we say we're delivering is actually what we're delivering. So, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you for
yes, Professor. Thank you. Just to given, thanks for, your time. And just would like to ask you, the core of hospitality and culinary education is experiential learning. What are your suggestions to ensure that we give that experience and prepare students to meet up the expectation of the industry? And actually, I know particularly this point of time.
No, absolutely. So, for example, for us, experiential education is critical for us because a student graduating from our program, they go in, or from any hospitality program, really, they go, whether they're working for a hotel or restaurant, a tour company, whatever aspect. One of the questions that hiring managers or HR managers in an interview typically ask is, tell us about your experience. So experiential education is you provide a foundation for the students, and then you allow them to apply, to make mistakes at lower stakes in the classroom, to I think it expands their curiosity. And you mentioned earlier the need for critical thinking, because that's one of the centers of our goal on our campus, is to help students think critically. How do you get them into solving problems? Because ultimately, a student coming to our institutions to earn a degree and get into the working place, that's really what they become, is problem solvers and to be come up with solutions. So education then becomes this more meaningful, where instead of just abstract theory, you're giving them opportunities to apply what they've learned, to solve problems, to learn how to think, because you don't just get up and be some great thought leader. You have to come from a place of knowledge first, and then experience and see how it is applied. So especially in our worlds with culinary and hospitality, which are very kinesthetic fields, that the experience, and a lot of students who come to us tend to be kinesthetic learners. So you have to give that experience, the how. You teach them, why are you doing this? How do you do this? And they're able to apply it practically, and then to see that work. So for us, every single program in the College of Hospitality Management has a required internship. So they, in our system, they actually do not, unless they have special permission from myself or the dean or so on, they do not take any other academic courses when they do their internship. That's the only thing they're focused on, is their internship. But that's not our only opportunity for experiential education. We try to embed experiential education in as many classes as we can. So I think it's critical now, especially in this environment where I saw in the true online sense, a lot of our students struggle. But what we've shifted to in the fall is virtual. So we're using the tools of technology to create a different experience where students can still work through, create things, solve problems, come up with solutions, and that. And that makes for not only a better rounded student, but a much better employee, because when they get into the marketplace, they're going to say, oh, you know, this is what we did, or if this is what the professor was talking about, and they can now, as I like to say, connect the dots. So experiential education comes in so many different forms, and it's critical to what we do.
Thank you. Apart from students, when they go to internship, is there any other opportunities your students get to, learn hands-on experience in terms of running a restaurant or cafe? Do you have such kind of, a part of your, curriculum?
Yes. So for example, in our food service management program, or food and beverage industry, as it has been changed to management program, they actually do 2 capstones. The one capstone is the advanced food service operations, which really is simulating a restaurant experience. So the model that we use there is the students are broken into teams, and then each team you have maybe a management team. Each team is the front of the house. 1 week they may be back of the house or something, but they're having that simulation where they have to market. They have to do the recs, the requisitions from the storeroom, as if they were purchasing in advance in a timely manner. So they're learning all those skills that they did from purchasing and cost control class to marketing class. They're bringing it all to one class where everything rides on that production. They come up with their own theme. They come up with their own marketing to get people to come into the restaurant and so on. And so it's a simulation. That we have in that course.
How evaluation is done, Professor, when you do the simulations? So how the follow-up and how evaluation is taken care of?
Right. So that's a very good question, because especially as we talk about outcomes assessment, that particular course in foods in our food service management and restaurant food and beverage degree programs, it has about, I want to say it's either 3 or 4 programmatic outcome assessments that's embedded in that course. So it's ongoing. So they have to complete pretty much a portfolio. So in terms of their recs, their marketing collateral, their financial statements, all these things they put in a portfolio and present it to the chef instructor. And it's evaluated based on the criteria. Everybody gets evaluated based on the same criteria. So it goes through with even customer feedback is part of that portfolio. They have to do their serve their comment cards and so on. That's embedded in that portfolio. They have to do a reflection of how they thought their service went, where did they drop the ball, or what went well, what didn't go so well, how did the theme, because, sometimes the chef gives a little bit of guidance, but it's really their show. So, sometimes, for example, they come in and they're gung-ho, it may be culturally a theme that's driven by their culture or something, but it doesn't quite fit in terms of the time they have for service or the style of service that they chose. Very similar things that happens in a restaurant that people make decisions on a restaurant. How many people go into a restaurant and say, hey, you know what, because mom's recipe was great, I'm going to open a restaurant and have this concept, but there are other elements into operating a restaurant that weren't taken into consideration. So that class really mirrors that experience, and that portfolio is comprehensive, and it really covers a lot in terms of the evaluation and the assessment.
Thank you. Now, I just would like to ask you, if you have to if you have to devise a parallel to Bloom's taxonomy for the hospitality education, what it would be? Because many of them says that, we follow Bloom's taxonomy, but, when you say hospitality or culinary, we should devise something which is, applicable to for us. Any thought on this?
Well, that's an interesting school of thought, but Bloom's, for one, we follow a lot, obviously modified to be practical. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about a lot as a faculty is how can we be more practical in our approach? You know, sometimes we do good work in terms of research and so on, but industry can't quite relate to what we're doing. And I think this probably speaks to what you're talking about with Bloom's, for example, where you have these pre-designated benchmarks, so to speak. But what does that mean? And I think probably what we really need to do is to unpack these measures. So what does it mean to evaluate? What does it mean to analyze? These are things that sometimes by themselves, students don't understand these words. So sometimes it's for us as faculty to really unpack, do a better job of unpacking these words. So it might not necessarily be a change in Bloom's per se, but how do we unpack the meaning of each of these benchmarks to make it relevant to industry? How can we find different measures from industry that can relate and match up to these, that when we say, you know, analyze or evaluate or whatever it is, we use metrics from industry that students can clearly understand, because sometimes as faculty, we lose sight that we are the experts, not the students. And we sometimes treat them as if they are the experts, and not realizing that, hey, this is why they're actually in school, because they don't yet have that expertise. So, you know, sometimes we have to do a little better job of unpacking and breaking things down for students so it's more understandable for them.
Right. And next, anyways, ever since the pandemic hit and we moved to online, virtual classes. So what would be the ideal policies on developing or choosing an assessment methodology in emergency remote teaching? It's, a big, doubt on everybody, and we would like to, get your expertise on this, how to go about it.
Okay, so, and I'll share, because this is ongoing conversation that we have in our department meetings and our college meetings, ongoing, faculty are second guessing, am I doing the right thing? How do you, in this environment, still use assessments in this environment while maintaining the academic integrity of a course? So those are ongoing real challenges that we're facing. But I think it really comes back to outcomes assessment, or, when you go back to what is it that you're trying to achieve? How can you achieve these things? So one of the things, and again, this is pre-COVID, that has helped us, that I brought to the table, is to challenge faculty to say, let's take a look at assessments, because it is an assessment an opportunity for growth, or is it an opportunity sometimes where, as faculty, we're saying, got you? I think it's a very realistic, what's the purpose of the assessment? What are you trying to accomplish with the assessment? Are you trying to get the student to demonstrate their competence or their knowledge in a particular subject or a particular skill? Then it doesn't have to be a summative exam. It could be a series of formative assessments over time that leads to this. So, for example, if you look at it, we do a lot of project-based work at Johnson & Wales. Projects, by and large, are typically seen as being summative, right? But if you break it down into more manageable sections with realistic timelines, where students can turn each section in, get some feedback. If our goal is to produce the best student, what's the term now? Is there any danger or demerit to say, if I give you some, if you turn your work in and I give you to redo, then I can't grade it again? It takes a little more work sometimes as a faculty member, but again, it's sometimes with timing and the way we course design, because when you start talking about outcomes assessment, then you start looking more intently and intentionally at your course design. And I think as we look at our course design, evaluation and assessments must become a central part of it, where we're more thoughtful about what is it that we're trying to accomplish. How do we truly measure? Is, for example, a 10-page essay the best measure of determining whether a student has some competence, or they know this theory or practice, or how can the skills? The thing with it is, as we've pivoted to this model and format, is technology has provided us with some wonderful tools, additional tools that we can use, especially when you're talking about some of the generational things now, with these kids being more into technology and so on. How do we use that to meet them where they are instead of some of our traditional ways? So instead of writing an essay, could it be that the student could create a video or a video portrait or something? There's so many different tools that you can use now with technology, especially in the virtual environment, where you can see it, you can visualize it, where it's not just the student going to Google, doing a Google search and regurgitating something at you. You don't know if
that's
it's work.
that reminds us, last year when our final year students, as part of their curriculum, they're supposed to do research projects. So normally we give, traditionally they've been asked to come out with traditional projects, like it could be a feasibility studies or techno-economic feasibility studies. So like as you mentioned, that we asked them to come out with what you would like to do instead of writing the regular thesis. So we given them an opportunities, and some of them came out with they would like to write a book on the traditional recipes, pertaining to their area, geographical location, and community. And some of them had devised a short video on cooking methods. So I think when we give them an opportunity in area of students' interest, I think they do wonderful job. As you mentioned, that if you could divide the timeline, and then the students who are submitting on timeline, and that breakup which we gave on any project or thesis, I think that's a great opportunities for them to also stick on to timeline, and the faculty also will be able to guide them properly.
Absolutely. And then that comes in how you develop the assessment weighting. So you could say, hey, you know what, if you on the first attempt turn in work that is perfect, quote unquote, then you get full marks. If you do, you might not earn full marks at a second attempt, but you have an opportunity to improve your performance. I think it's a tremendous learning opportunity. It's a teachable moment where you're providing feedback. That's not going to be lost on that student. But one of the things that we've had to do in our capstone is go to, and one of the challenges, as I mentioned earlier, is that we have required internships. Well, obviously with the state of the industry, internships became a big challenge for us in the spring term, in the summer term, and even in the fall. We had tremendous challenges with our final year students getting internship opportunities. We had to create what we call direct experiential education courses, and transform the internships into these courses, where we got faculty, different faculties with different expertise, along with industry representatives, to come in and help the students with case study approach. So
Right.
similar, the industry person would come in throughout a type of situation. And again, but this ties into what we've been talking about with Bloom's, without using Bloom's in that is
Right.
critical thinking, problem solving that's come to the fore. So those are some of the things that we've done. Looking at other opportunities in this new virtual thing, if you look at some of the ways that industry has pivoted, for example, sorry, there's so much virtual seminars, symposiums, and so on. Well, guess what? This is an opportunity if, for students, a lot of them are free, that students sign up, as teaching a policy, I'm teaching a policy, international policy on tourism course this semester. And there's a virtual island summit for small island developing states. I had the students attend at least 1 or 2 sessions and then pick a topic again. The only guideline was, or the box was, you had to attend this virtual island summit, but they got to pick which sessions they wanted to go, what interested them, whether it was sustainability or whatever it is. And then they came back and did a little report. Of course, I gave them some guidelines into how to write that report. And they benefited a lot from it. So, it's again, experiential. So they're there listening to industry experts talking about real world industry problems. So again, even though it was in this virtual format, it was industry expert. One blessing in disguise, so to speak, that this virtual format has presented. Sometimes for us, we like to bring industry to the classroom, but it's a challenge sometimes, busy executives and so on, to get them to come to campus and so on. But in a virtual format, somebody can, and industry is wonderful, that they'll willingly stop into your class virtually for half an hour to give a talk or connect with students and so on. Again, giving the students exposure with industry. So many different things. I think back to one of the questions you asked is, along with the culinarians, what we've done with some of this is, and we've been working on this prior to COVID, is what we refer to as the flipped classroom, where the chefs would make do their demonstrations, record it, post it so the students can watch it either ahead of class or preferably ahead of class. But it's there, they can go back to it, and then class time is bent for discussions or questions.
It's easy for them to connect when they come to their lab session. So it's
absolutely. So it's there. The demonstrations are there. They're posted. They can go back and watch them at their leisure. And so on. So that was also another thing that we do.
Professor, if you could tell me something about give us some idea how to conduct open book test, because we're as we were all discussing, this COVID-19 accelerated higher education, and it's given a lot of opportunities for think in a new way to assess. Right. And could you please give us some idea or suggestions on how to go about open book test?
So that's also a discussion that we've had a lot in our college. As you know, there are the traditionalists who want the textbooks closed, and I'm for tradition. I'm not one that readily knocks tradition, but at some point we've got to look at where we're at. So what's the reality? Whether you are a senior executive or a junior manager in a hotel, in a restaurant, and you have a question that you're not so sure of, you've got something in your hand that you can readily, in 30 or so seconds, go to.
Right.
So that's the reality of today's world. So
Right.
why not offer the student that opportunity?
Right.
What I challenge the faculty to do is to don't set up students, because I don't know about you guys in India, but unfortunately in North America, a large percentage of our students, if you put them in an environment, their default is go to Google. It's just the reality. So I say
Okay,
to my
that's a common phenomenon everywhere. That's what we do.
exactly. So I say to
Right.
my faculty, don't set them up for failure.
Right.
Try to be a little more creative in,
Right.
again, going back to the point I made earlier about how we create these assessments. Try to make it, so for me, everything I'll say is in like my policy class, I'll say, whatever the question is, support your discussion with current, relevant industry examples.
Exactly.
You can use the
Right.
textbook for the theory all you want, but one of
Right.
the things that I've focused on, and that now checks a couple of different boxes, because in terms of the higher order thinking, I'm looking for the analysis and the practical application
Right.
to come up with examples that are relevant
Right, sir.
to the subject that's been. So in terms of open book, one of the things is timing. So, you know, if I don't know if you have like, well, you can do like timed examinations and stuff like that.
Right, sir.
So you're
Yeah, we
not
do.
giving
We
them,
do.
right, you're
Yeah.
not giving them the whole day. So at some point
Yeah.
you're going to have to
Yes.
read the materials, study or something, but you're not giving them the whole day to go look for the answer. So at some
Right.
point you have to have some background of what's going on, or you're going to
Right.
use your whole time. Look, so that's another strategy, is the timing. Is the time allotted enough for them to comfortably, and also bearing in mind difference in you know, it could be, you know, some students are not are at different levels just in test taking with anxiety and stuff like that. So
Right.
is there a decent measure standard where the average student, so not your ace, not your top student and not your bottom
Right.
student, what's the reasonable time for your average student to complete this
Students to
question?
complete. Right.
Right. So and
Okay.
you look at that, and then
Right.
you know, there are tools out there, plagiarism checkers, that you
Right.
can say, hey, you know what, you don't want a certain percentage of, you can use
Right.
whatever, make sure it's
Certain
properly
percentage
cited.
permit. Yeah.
Right, you can make sure it's properly cited, or, you know, so there are different parameters that you can do with open book tests to
Right.
make sure that you're still maintaining the rigor. Because I'll
Right.
tell you that it's not as easy if you do it right. It's not as easy for the student as some people might think it is.
Yeah. Some,
Because
students also got used to that, traditional way of giving, the examination. Then moment we put all these, the new way of assessing, the techniques, and they have little bit of rigidness, and then they come out with lots of excuses that, it can't be done. And then, but anyway, we have to move forward, and that's going to happen in future. Now, Professor, could you please tell me that you have any policies on for the dyslexic students? Because some of them, not all of them, at the same platform, but some of them do have from the childhood they have this problem. So do you have any policy on for the dyslexic students and assessment, and how we are going about it?
yes, here in the United States, it's actually a requirement by law that once a student presents, and it doesn't have to come to the faculty. For example, at Johnson Wales, we have what's called the Center of Academic Support.
Right.
Here, once they take the documentation to the Center of Academic Support, and this is actually the recommended method for that we recommend to the student, that instead of dealing with, let's say they're taking 4 or 5 classes for the semester, instead of dealing with 4 or 5, and for some students, it's uncomfortable, it's traumatic and so on, you're adding to the anxiety. We just say, go to the designated counselor and we have a designated counselor who handles all accommodations in the Center of Academic Support. They reach out to the faculty to say, they evaluate it, of course, to make sure that it is authentic. Then they reach out to the faculty member to say, X student has presented documentation. They don't say what it is. So the confidentiality of the student is maintained in terms of their diagnosis or whatever it is. And that, you know, the Center for Academic Support would be, say, for example, we have, if let's say you give an hour for testing, it may be that they have 2 times the testing, or a time and a half, or in some cases, in terms of dyslexic student, it could be that some of those students actually get to take their exams in the Center of Academic Support with the help of a trained, this trained person who may, sometimes it's just reading and explaining, but not giving them the answers. So, you know, it's somebody who is trained in that, but it's something here that's required by law here in America that we have to pay attention to, and that we do. And that's on every syllabus for us, where if you have, if a student has a learning disability, that they need to bring to the Center for Academic Support.
All right. What kind of, next question is, what kind of training do you suggest is to require to build or enhance the capacity of teachers in a higher education institution for outcome-based curriculum designing and delivery?
Well, I think forums like this is definitely, you know, the way to go for it. It's effective for, in terms of global faculty, college, school faculty. If individual faculties can attend seminars or conferences and so on, then come back. One of the ways, as I started to get into outcomes work years ago, that I went to is presenting at conferences and opportunities to do a little bit more digging and research and so on, and making presentations at conferences and so on. But definitely one of the most effective ways is just forums like this, where you talk as a group, because we're all teaching the same things, but sometimes we teach as we all have, sometimes some of us, we have specific areas of expertise. But this global forum as a school, as a college, is important because it helps break down some of those silos. So, for example, before we really got fully into outcomes assessment, unfortunately, some of our faculty never knew what else was in the curriculum. But this forum, when we started to look at outcomes assessment, and like I said, it's the work of everyone, not just in the courses where assessment is taking place, but in the courses where its concepts are introduced and reinforced, and just elsewhere across the curriculum. Because one of the things in doing this work that we found in one of our programs, in our tourism program, there's a tremendous gap that we had in the program, where students were graduating from the program who never sat in a class where they learned certain metrics of the hotel industry. And that came about just from doing outcomes assessment work and speaking in these kinds of global forum. So what I can tell you from our perspective is, what we do is, at the start of each academic year, we have a day and a half that we set aside to looking at the data, looking at the results from the previous year, making an outcomes plan to say, what are the gaps that we have seen? How are we going to remedy it? What are we recommending to remedy some of the problems that we've seen? So that's that specific forum for that, but also other forums where we talk about best practices in teaching across the board, and what works, what doesn't work, and so on. So industry. We share a lot from industry. So for example, we'll have just forums where we bring in, whether it's a general manager or senior manager, to come in to tell us what's going on in industry, what are they looking for in our students. And
Right.
so we can see. So one of the things that we did this some months back, and immediately one of the feedback that we got, for example, was industries now saying that, look, our days till this COVID dissipates is we're not really interested in employees who are specialists anymore. We're looking for generalists. So right away, that's feedback that we've got to look and to say, you know, you have a student who maybe just wants to be in the sales department. Well, I'm telling you, you better learn or go take some classes where you'll learn about the front desk or maybe food and beverage and so on, because chances are you won't land a job just working in the sales office during this time, at least for the next year or two. So you know, these forums, staying in touch with industry, having faculty serve on different industry councils and boards and so on, is a tremendous way of just staying in touch and staying up to date with training for outcomes assessment.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. And could you please share with us to how a choice-based credit system curriculum works and how it is beneficial to a student?
All right, so choice, it's one of the things I'm not a big expert on, but just from you've seen it in doing this work, you see it, and it's, instead of having like percentages and so on, you have different aspects where I think you alluded to it before, where let's say you're in let me use a practical example. In my class, International Policies on Tourism, I'm given a project. Students have a choice of what they can do, but it's not on a rigid percentage basis, but there's marks, there's like certain times that they have to come. I give class time to work on the project and so on. And I think it adds to the flexibility. If you think about us as an industry and the need for flexibility, it's one of the things where the choice, where students can choose in terms of our programs. What we have too is, it's not just within the class, but within the program is, so we'll have a block where we say, you've got to take maybe one foundation course or two foundation courses, but then you have a menu where you can pick 3 or 4 courses, you know, based on the number of credits, of course, that you require for the student. And then they have the choice. It's custom, you know, it's what we are seeing again, it's not just industry looking for flexibility, but if you also look at the market that we're serving in terms of generational characteristic, is they also like flexibility. They don't like what to be, they don't like to be told what to do in terms of this new generation that we're now serving. So this helps to present them with somewhat of a customized choice that they're making. But obviously, you know, we're the experts in terms of developing curriculum. So the menus have to be carefully thought out. So what we do have this block, but then we also have some free elective blocks that we say, hey, you know what? It's up to you. You do what you want to do with a couple, but it has to be a balance to make sure, again, that if we're looking at the outcomes-based education, that how does this check the box in terms of contributing to programmatic outcomes and ensuring that the students can say that they've met all the objectives, whether you have 4 or 5 programmatic outcomes in terms of skills and knowledge that you require them to have.
Right, sir. Great. Next is, I would like to ask you, what is an alternative for summer school or an industry internship? Because industry, it takes some time to recover. So like, college like us, large group of students where we need to place them for industry internship. And our system is that, we give the priority on, the student's choice. But I think it may take some time to recover. So you have any suggestion for that, for
I think I mentioned, for us at least, this is the one that we did over the summer,
right,
is the direct, what we call the direct experiential education courses, where it's really a case study based course,
right,
because obviously you can't go on internship. Another big piece of for us at Johnson Wales is study abroad. So obviously too, if you look at, it's the perfect storm. You can't
okay,
do study abroad. We couldn't do study abroad in the summer. Actually, the provost has already canceled our study abroad for next summer as well,
right,
with that uncertainty.
all
So
right,
it's doing these direct experiential education courses where they're designed with case studies in mind, real world case studies. The students had a lot of good feedback. We partnered with
right,
industry. We brought in some industry professionals. So, the courses were with a faculty, obviously in that designated expertise, and a relevant industry executive that
right,
they operated the class, and they given kind of case studies from industry. One guy did something from some of the feedback that I got in terms of a marketing project. So you could
right,
see people in the COVID time, how do you move from to utilizing more app-based delivery services like Uber Eats, and so
right,
on, to help. So those are some of the projects that they were real world stuff that they were working on, how to
right,
come up with protocols and stuff for a restaurant in terms of drive-through and pivoting from, no in-person dining room service to delivery takeout service and so on. So
right,
even in independent restaurants, they had some case studies on that where, their 99% of their business was totally in dine-in service, some of the higher end restaurants.
right.
So they were coming up with cases on building solutions for some of that.
Okay. How faculty performance are, evaluated? What are the, the mechanism you follow? Right?
All right, so it's a self-assessment
Right.
partially. In terms of how it works is at the end of the academic year, as you go through your year-end evaluation. So I sit with the faculty. The faculty goals would have been set a year ago at the end of the year. So you have the summer. Some people will teach summer school. Some people are off for summer. You come back in the fall. They revise those goals if they choose to.
Right.
Some people will just keep the goals that they did, and so you take it from there. Is then the goals. You have a mid-year assessment, which is really just a touch point to say, how your goals doing. Are you on target? Are you on track to meeting your
Right.
goals? And we cover goals in teaching, university service, and scholarship. So those
All
are
right.
three areas that our faculty that we're assessed on is teaching, university service, and scholarship. It's weighted based on your rank. So the
Right.
higher the rank, so teaching comes for junior faculty just coming in, teaching is obviously going to be the most heavily weighted. Then,
Right.
you actually for us now, they've instituted the last 5 years or so a track, so you can do either scholarship or university service.
Right.
But university service, and then everybody has to do outcomes. That's how serious we take outcomes. Everybody has to do outcomes work. So, so for example, in the College of Hospitality, we have about 6 undergraduate programs, 2 graduate programs. So each faculty has to be on an outcome team to do the outcomes plan and the outcomes analysis for the year. And then at the year end, you do your year end as chair, you do have to do observation, classroom observation. And then if you're up for promotion, then you're obviously you have to turn a dossier in, and then you're also evaluated and observed by peers from other colleges. So you know, from arts and science or the College of Business or College of Culinary Arts, they'll come to hospitality, and you know, our faculty obviously wouldn't observe a faculty from our department, so it would be there. But it's a large part. It's development. It's more developmental in nature, where we want people to be constantly making progress towards becoming better practitioners.
All right. Apart from you know, you have a regular assessment which pattern. Do students also give feedback about the faculty teaching? Right?
Yes.
You have that? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes. We've just actually coincidentally perfect timing in terms of COVID, that the university just pivoted to a company that does it for us, and it's all online now. So the students will get a link to their email 1 month before the end of the semester. And then they have about 3 weeks. It has to be completed before their final exam. And then, so students do have a say. And, you know, as chair, you get to review the student feedback of the faculty as well.
All right. Okay. Another thing which I would like to ask you, Professor, industry connect is important for any, academic setup. And as you mentioned in the beginning, a couple of, times. But what are the advisory committee which you have in your board, to enhance the academic, collaboration, right? For example, we have connected with ITC hotels, right? So you have anything which, because we want to know that if you have a special academic advisory committee on specifically for certain things. So how, if you could give me some, throw on some light on that.
Yeah, well, fortunately for us on our campus, we're fortunate just because of, we're really blessed because of geography, in terms of Miami and South Florida being the region and the metropolitan area that it is. It's, we have every single major player in the hotel industry that's present here, big restaurant operators. So we have for different majors, we have specific industry advisory boards, but I mentioned, I think you mentioned in the introduction that as chair, the university is also a member of the International Council, ICRE. I don't know if you guys are members of ICRE.
Yes.
So we're ICRE members. We're also members of the Greater Miami, allied members of the Greater Miami and the Beaches Hotel Association, which is the industry, and the Florida Hotel and Lodging Association. We're associate members of those, and as chair, I get to serve on the board of directors for those. So that helps tremendously to bridge gaps with industry. Thankfully for us, these, the Greater Miami and the Beaches Association and the Florida, they both have very special education segments. So, we're not the only game in town here. We have Florida International up the street. We also have Miami-Dade College, which is a smaller two-year program. So they really work with us as industry partners. They see the work that we do as crucial to what they do in terms of the labor supply.
Right.
So these partnerships are crucial. For example, when we launched the cruise management degree, it was the counties, the Miami-Dade counties promotional. Miami-Dade has what's called the Beacon Council, which is responsible for bringing industry to to the region, and they approached us to say, hey, look, with the expansion that's going on with the cruise ship industry, we have all three, fortunately for us, we have all three major cruise lines, Carnival, Norwegian, and Royal Caribbean, that are all headquartered here in Miami. The labor forecast for them isn't looking too good. Would you guys consider developing this program? So that's one of the reasons why it's so critical to stay connected with industry and some of the industry councils and so on, because they'll support you in terms of not only scholarships for students, but internship opportunities, volunteer opportunities. So, when we hosted the Super Bowl from the NFL last year, our students, we had over 100 students and faculty that participated in volunteering in such a great experience. You talk about experiential experience. It wasn't just the sports management students, but it was the culinary students, the hospitality students doing meet and greets and airport meets and all of that. So, the connection to industry is critical. We're working on some other projects and so on in terms of expanding some of our industry contacts and reach and so on, and some of the work that we want to do out in the Caribbean. And I think I mentioned when I spoke to you yesterday that we'll be in further discussions to see how we can partner, because I think global partnership is critical in terms of what we do as an industry. The scientists do it, the people in med search do it, so why not hospitality education? Why shouldn't we be sharing our best practices or research or reach or industry connections to make a stronger industry? Because a stronger industry means more students are attracted to the industry, better for our business as well. So, it's a symbiotic relationship where everybody benefits.
Definitely. Do you also invite, external, industry professional as external examiners for the assessment? Yes.
We have certain courses, especially like in our capstone course, where we'll designate, and in our college, each year we have an executive in residence. So that's somebody who has, some of the criteria is they have to have had a certain level of, a certain number of years experience working at a certain level, at least a general manager or above. They come in as, and this is not just for assessments in certain courses, but also for mentorship. So somebody who has clout, who is able to utilize maybe a junior manager or junior managers as mentors and so on for students, and doing little forums. We have little like coffee, just sip and chat, little forums where students can just come talk about the state of the industry and so on. So that's very critical, where we maintain these relationships. One of the things that I try to do as chair is in terms of my adjunct faculty and hiring part-time faculty, is wherever I can find an industry professional who has the qualifications. Obviously, they have to have the academic qualifications too. And I'll tell you that that's one of the things right now with my team that makes my team so strong, is that I have some great people from industry who are serving as part-time faculty. I have lawyers, general managers, business owners who are serving as real experts in what they do. I mean, you can't put a measure on that. Just for a 19 or 20-year-old kid to say, hey, you know what? I'm taking a class with XYZ, who is the director of maybe Sandals Resorts International or something. I mean, that, just that alone, just brings so much value to the classroom.
Great. On one, the last question, Professor, I think we've taken enough time, and it's early morning for you, and you've taken so much of time. The last question, and I would like to ask you, you have a process of academic audits, because we do, but there's an external body to come and, to see that whether we are in the right track. You have some kind of, mechanism?
So for us, at Johnson Wales, and particularly Johnson Wales, North Miami, we have 2.
Right.
And well, actually 3. So let me or maybe 4. So we have first advisor boards,
Right.
which is outside, but controlled by us. We determine who is on the board. Separate and apart from the advisor board, we also have program reviews. So
Right.
on the program review, it's university driven, internally driven, but we have an academic, usually from another university, who is usually the chair of the committee. Then we'll have, actually we have 2 academicians and then 1 industry. So it's usually a 3-person panel. So that's for us, where we have, both academic and industry come take a look at our programs, what we're doing, and give us a report, give us recommendations on how to improve and so on. Obviously, we also have our accredited body, because our parent campus is in Providence, Rhode Island. We are accredited by the New England Commission on Higher Education, NECHI. So the same commission that gives accreditation to Harvard and MIT and those Ivy League schools, all the Ivies actually, is our accrediting body. So we've just actually gained our 10-year reaccreditation, which is the maximum that they do. It's very comprehensive, where it's not just the academics that they look at, but they're looking at the financial health of the university and so on. And then on our campus, very specifically, actually Johnson Wales has 4 campuses. So there are 2 campuses that has this state requirement. So our Charlotte campus, which is in the state of North Carolina, they're even more strict than us here in Florida. That the North Carolina Commission Department of Education, and here for us in Miami, the Florida Department of Education, that they come in specifically and they look at the academic programming every single year that we have to go through those audits. So one of the things for us is we have to maintain the syllabi to make sure that the syllabi that we're using across all courses, because challenges us that we say we're truly one university, 4 campuses with licensure in 4 different states. So, so that consistency, so every faculty at the start of the term has to turn their syllabus in for each course. It has to be consistent with textbooks and just the language and so on, and the content and everything. Another thing that I know the state regulators will look at is, you mentioned it earlier, student feedback. They'll look at that. They'll look at how faculty are evaluated. So all these things, we have big binders that we have to prepare even in this digital age.
Right.
And they come and it's a literal green room that you set it up in the room and you leave, and the only time you hear from them is if they have questions or so on. But you get used to it. So compliance, we're very big on compliance as a university. So even as a college, that's a big part of my job as chair is compliance and making sure that we're meeting all the regulations and all the standards and so on. And then we have other internal mechanisms, especially in the virtual world, that we'll get a report from our online people about faculty activity in a course.
Right.
So we can look to see, are you engaged? What's going on? And so on.
All right. Thank you, Professor, for such an insightful and amazing session. I think I know it's a pleasure interacting with you to learn so much and what best practices which you all do in Johnson and Wales campus. And I think all on behalf of my colleagues, I would like to thank you for your time. And I think it's early morning for you. And 13 and a half hours difference, and you took your time, and it's an amazing. and we appreciate, our sincere appreciation to you. And Dr. Vidya, over to you, Vidya.
Thank you, Chef. Thank you, Professor. Once again, I reiterate what Chef mentioned just now. It was a wonderful presentation. I'll just take 2 minutes. So as you have rightly mentioned, post-COVID, maybe the industry is not looking for specialists even in India, but looking for generalists. So I feel we as academicians, it's our responsibility to prepare and develop students who are market suitable and flexible through focusing on outcome-based education. So, thanks to you for giving us all those inputs that are relevant for both curriculum and assessment. We do have most of these measures that you are taking in US as well here in our university, which is like the one that you have mentioned about simulation or internships or problem solving case studies in classrooms. Maybe as the chef mentioned, we are a large classroom, so we are finding it little more difficult to meaningfully implement those measures effectively in the classrooms. So thank you for highlighting those once again. And as you said, though we are an academic discipline, we are still young and we are hesitant towards accepting changes and innovations. I think this is the time, as you said, with the COVID onset of COVID. So we are in the midst of this historic growth. So it's the time for us to continue with this symbiotic relationships and enrich our learning and experience both. So thank you so much once again, and we hope to continue, this meaningful association with you and maybe some of your colleagues in the future, sir.
Absolutely, and I have a very talented team, so I'd love to develop this connection further. And it was an absolute pleasure just sharing. As you can see, when I share with colleagues, it's a passion of mine that really working towards developing an industry that I love. I worked in the industry a number of years myself before coming to the academy, and I think we're really at a cusp of where innovation and passion and so can drive what we do to make what we do a lot more meaningful and just to carry us into the next phase of where we go. So thank you again for having me. It was a distinct honor, and I really enjoyed the experience and look forward to growing this relationship some more.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Thanks. Good night and